Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the most common things leaders do to kill morale. Welcome back, everybody. I am Kale Houser. This is the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with me today. We are continuing part 2 of our most common mistakes leaders make that kill team morale. And as just a quick review, we're discussing as a follow-on to our previous podcast about how important morale is to your organization. And these are just some tips that I figured I'd throw out there of things that are the common things that leaders do that they may not even be aware that they're doing, right? That's kind of the point of this podcast, is to teach people stuff that maybe they're not aware of already, that overall affect the morale of the organization and the morale of individuals, which in turn affects the organization. So as a quick review, what we talked about last podcast is mass punishment. Don't do it. I don't think I need to talk anymore about that. Spending time with your problem children versus your top performers and focusing all your efforts on them and ignoring your top performers. Being focused on your own vision and agenda, and really not explaining that or including your people in that vision and agenda, which creates either you're with me or against me type of mentality. And then staying so busy in your office, whether legitimately or not, and dictating and leading by email, right? So that creates a very disconnected workforce, as well as if you have an open door policy that you don't honor, right? So if you do implement an open door policy, right, that's the policy of anytime somebody has an issue, a complaint, a gripe, whatever, you're willing and able to listen to that. So you need to honor that if that is going to be your policy, if you're going to make that known. All right, so I wanted to continue on, and I left you with a little bit of a teaser, for lack of a better term, about something that happened to me that absolutely was almost, I might say it was the final straw that set me up for walking away from a pretty good 16-year Air Force career. So we were on, this is in my MQ-9 days, and I was on the launch and recovery element, which means we were responsible for taking off and landing the aircraft. That was our primary responsibility. And as part of that, we had a package that we could deploy. So we were testing that package and that capability in a big exercise out in California. So we were coming from New Mexico, did the whole 9 yards, like the fake deployment orders, what we call the quote unquote bag drag. That's where you load up all your gear that you would have if you were going out on like a 60 or 30 or 90 day deployment to some foreign country where you didn't have all the amenities that we have back here in the States. So we call it a bag drag, which includes like chemical gear, body armor, all that stuff. Pretty much everything short of weapons for this. And we loaded up onto C-130s, C-5, C-17s. I forget what we were doing. I think it was C-17s that time. And flew out to California, just like we would if we were getting on a C-17 and he was flying us to some foreign country to set this up. And I was in charge of it, at least in name, all right? So our squadron commander was with us for this, and it was supposed to be my final check for getting signed off as an official mission commander to be able to take charge of one of these elements and be the officer in charge for a future deployment if this ever happened for real. And it was kind of the culmination of training, and I'm supposed to be able to do all these different things. Cool. And I was excited for it, like, sweet, this will be fun. It's not anything outside of the normal. It's the wheelhouse, we land, we set up tents, the maintainers do their thing to get the aircraft all ready, and we do our thing to get the, our flying capabilities, learning the local area, which means maps and GPS and all that kind of stuff. But we were doing it in California in an exercise scenario. So it was a proof of concept as well as a, culmination final exam for me. But our squadron commander was there as part of it. And everything went as expected and as the history had shown with this squadron commander, that I was in charge but not in charge, okay? I was in charge I don't know if even in spirit is the right word, or even on paper. I was in name in charge, but not in charge, if you catch my drift on that. But to be perfectly clear, he was in charge still. He was calling the shots, and if he saw something that he didn't like, doing things the way he wanted them done, never mind that I had my own way, or I had my style of leadership and he had his style of leadership, which were not the same by any stretch. He would essentially override or make it very non-verbally evident that he did not like what was happening. Okay, and he was kind of always that one that was, you always felt like you were just being judged all the time when he was watching you. So we had our first day, and there, as with any exercise, especially because we had new people on our team that had never done this, so it's a learning experience as well, as just dealing with like, oh, we forgot something, and just the stuff that comes up during an exercise. And we had our hiccups, but eventually it got done, and it admittedly took longer than what it quote unquote should have by the book, due to a couple different factors. And maybe I wasn't crack the whip enough, who knows what could have done differently. Certainly it was learning points. But I'll never forget that it was the following day. We were walking back. We had gotten up, I think, early that next day to finish up, all the finishing touches and getting ready to actually fly and having everything operational and doing all of our checks. And where we had set up to fly it was a good little walk from the end of the flight line to back to the ops area where we kind of set up offices. And I was walking back for something, and just trudging along just through this kind of grass that's in between the taxiways. And he comes up behind me and he goes, "Oh, hey, Kale, wait up." I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "You're doing much better today." So let me sink that in, so it's just him and I around. There's no one else around. So that's a positive, right? I guess, kind of, because it was a compliment, but not a compliment, right? It was an underhanded compliment. It was a compliment with a barb attached, which are never the types of compliments you want to give. You never want to say, "Man, you sure did suck yesterday, but you're doing slightly better today, so that's good," right? That's no way to treat people. That's no way to talk to people, especially when you're trying, if your intention is to encourage. That's just not the way you do it. And so I kind of took that second to look at him. I'm like, "Okay, thanks." And I just kept walking. Like, this isn't worth engaging and going, because it was essentially him looking for me to give him an opening to critique me further, which no employee is going to do that for their leader, especially when they recognize what's going on. And I will say that deflated me for the rest of the exercise. And the exercise went on, I want to say it was like for a week or so, maybe 5 days. That we were all spending out there together in California. And it was fun because I got to hang out with some of the other guys, but for the mission part of it, it was miserable. It sucked. I'll be very frank with you, because the leader that I had at the time just crushed morale, and everyone else saw what was going on. And there were other incidences that happened during this trip that kind of further did not ingrain us to him for the trip. So I just wanted to kind of leave that with you as a bonus thing to do when you're talking with your people to not kill morale is none of these underhanded quote unquote compliments, right? Compliments that are based on digs, compliments that are based on critiques, okay? So make sure you're very clear with that. Keep your critiques with your critiques and your compliments with your compliments. And anytime you do need to critique, start with that as a constructive criticism, and then the kind of classic example, add two positives, like, "Hey, you guys were you were a little slow yesterday. Here are some things that I would suggest doing in the future to kind of maybe help encourage speed and efficiency, but you guys really rocked on teamwork," or whatever the case may be, right? That is how you keep people's morale high and motivate them and inspire them to actually want to do good and do better. But I wanted to touch on these couple other things quickly, as I've wasted a lot of time talking about that story, because it was very frustrating, honestly. One of them is promoting a favored employee that doesn't necessarily meet the standards and skill requirements to be in that position, especially if it's a supervisory or leadership type position, and also in punishing the opposite. So another quick story about this is back in my MQ9 days, but earlier in a different squadron, we had a I don't know if a sect is the right word, but a group of people within our squadron that were specially qualified to help with strikes, with kinetic engagements. And it was something that they had proven themselves experienced. They'd proven themselves tactically proficient and able to kind of maintain that cool head in the GCS, because honestly, sometimes it was stressful and people didn't handle it very well, especially the mechanics of flying and dealing with the 1,000 different things that we dealt with, especially on a kinetic engagement on a strike. So we had these, groups of sensors and pilots that helped handle that. Well, and they had kind of earned a reputation because, as with anything, there were good ones and there were not so good ones. And they had gone to a friend of mine who was very good pilot, very good MQ-9 pilot. He's an awesome guy, certainly worthy of higher rank as he gained it, worthy of putting in more and more leadership roles. But he wasn't so on board with the reputation that this group of people within our squadron had gained, and he didn't really buy into the whole concept of it, as far as having this set apart special group that had the authority to do some of the things that they had authority to do, that were really the same rank as you, or even younger rank than maybe I had been or some of the other pilots had been. So at one point they had approached him saying, "Hey, Lieutenant so-and-so, we want you to go through our certification program to be part of this special group." And he goes, "No, thank you." And he was polite about it. And I think it took the guy who had asked him to do it, kind of took him back, because how could you possibly turn down this honor? Which kind of gives you an insight into how they felt at the time. What? It's like, who wouldn't we want to be part of the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan on the team, right? Who wouldn't want to be part of the LA Lakers or part of the Patriots with Tom Brady at the helm? Why would you not want to be part of this special group? It was unfathomable. And he proceeded, because this is the type of guy this young lieutenant was, and he was a prior enlisted guy, so he's a little bit older, not your typical lieutenant. He proceeded to tell him, "Hey, I appreciate the honor, or at least the request for me to join, but I don't really believe in what you guys do. I don't believe in the concept of it. I don't, it's not what I think is appropriate of how to run our squadron." And there were many people that shared that same view. Just very few of us were in the position to do anything about it, because this was a favored program with our squadron commanders. And to tell you that he was, I don't know if ostracized is the right word, but definitely shunned from that point. So once it became clear that he wanted nothing to do with this special group, that special group used its power and influence to essentially help him move out the door, which was actually to his benefit, because he went to a different squadron that was pure training. So he went to, instead of working shift work and holidays, he went to a Monday through Friday schedule, all the holidays off, because he did training as an instructor for our platform. So it worked out really well for him. He just didn't have that, unofficial special, group on his resume. But no big deal, right? It wasn't important to him. It wasn't something that he felt led or needed to do to further his career. And honestly, he did quite well for himself. He became an evaluator and kind of worked his way up through that other squadron and did very well. But it gives you an idea of, you can't favor just those employees, and it's not that he didn't deserve to, but I'm talking specifically about employees that don't necessarily meet those because they're favored in some other way. Okay, and we'll touch on a little bit about this, I think, in our next podcast, because we've talked a lot about just these two concepts really today. But you can't swing on both ends of the extremes. You can't favor the undeserving, and you can't punish the deserving if they don't fall in line. Okay, so maybe you offer that promotion to somebody, or you say, "Hey, you're doing really good here. We want you to take, charge of this department," and they respectfully decline. I'm not talking about if they're like, "Oh, piss off. There's no way I'm doing that. I don't believe in this organization," right? That's a different case. But if I'm talking like they want to stay where they're at, or they're not ready for that kind of responsibility, or to put in the effort that it would take to rise to that level that you need them to be, you can't turn around and just punish them, right? If you're not creating that, you don't want to create that culture of up or out. Okay, and you hear that a lot, and that happens a lot in especially corporate America, and certainly in the military. You either promote or you get out, like go do something else, see you later, right? And that just doesn't work for everybody. That's not what they're interested in. So we certainly didn't get through as many of that I wanted to, so I think we're probably going to end up with part 3, which will be coming forthright. I appreciate you spending your time with me for these 15 or so minutes. If you have any questions, if you want to have any specific ideas that I haven't covered yet, or after you listen to all 3 of them that I have missed, please let me know. Drop me a line at kale@kalehouserleadership.com. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. Again, no matter where you're at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.